I'm one of the biggest Batman fans you will ever come across, so keep that in mind that I will be a little bit biased with this review of Batman Begins. I was a huge fan of Batman the Animated Series as well as Batman Beyond, and anytime he shows up in something that isn't Batman related, such as Justice League or Static Shock, I go a little crazy. Now, I've been reading up on a lot of the comics actually, and I'm actually not a comic book person. It's hard to believe that it's been almost 20 years since I first saw Batman Begins. Up until that point in my life, I think that the only other Batman movie that I had ever seen was Batman and Robin. I remember that I went to go see Batman Begins with my dad and my sister at a theater that does not exist anymore, unfortunately, and I've been a huge fan of Batman Begins ever since. Batman Begins is one of the few movies that I think I can actually watch from Christopher Nolan. It annoys me that everyone thinks that Nolan is a great director, or that some of them think that he's the greatest director of all time, when he's actually kind of meh. Nolan's not a bad director, he's just extremely mediocre, even at the point where he is right now in his career with having just won an Oscar for everything with Oppenheimer, one of the most boring movies I have ever seen. Look, I think he's mediocre at best and subpar at worst. You can tell that he's very inexperienced in Batman Begins because there were a lot of camera shots that he decided to edit in that were just out of place. Also, Nolan doesn't use establishing shots to show us where the hell the characters are at, and yes, we figure it out eventually while we are watching, but it is crucial to know and study this stuff in order to become a great director. Now, Nolan's not bad, but like I said, he's inexperienced and unaware of things that could make him a great director. Don't misunderstand me, though. Other than Nolan being an extremely mediocre director, in my humble opinion, Batman Begins is an amazing movie in all of the ways that I never imagined that it would be. I used to think of myself as kind of a Batman expert, but that was only until I saw this, and then I realized I don't know anything, because I didn't even know who Ra's al Ghul was. And after playing the video games, I have to say I know even less about that. But I think Christopher Nolan did a great job of making the Batman universe seem like a universe that actually exists. Now, I've seen a few Batman movies now at this point, and I think that the thing that separates this movie from all the other Batman movies is in the way that Nolan puts Batman in a universe that's physically possible in some ways, but makes the technology that he uses to be somewhat ridiculous. Allow me to explain a bit further. I think that this was emphasized with the newest The Batman movie, with Robert Pattinson playing Bruce Wayne and Batman. Now, that movie was the perfect example of how they tried to create a Batman universe where everything was physically possible, and personally, I didn't think it felt right. And looking back on Batman and Robin, there's a ridiculousness in the things that happen in that movie, and some of those things are the ridiculously choreographed scenes, like, say, the ice skating scene near the beginning of the movie, and that's really the only thing I remember, so, I mean, I'm sure everybody can agree with me that that movie was just ridiculous in a lot of ways. Batman Begins, though, was, in my opinion, placed at the perfect spot on the spectrum between being physically possible, but also being a little bit ridiculous with how the technology works. And balance in that sort of way can be a key thing to do in these types of movies. I also did enjoy the story of Batman Begins. I think that it kind of rushes the scene where Bruce Wayne's parents get killed, but everybody knows how that happens. And other than that, the story is very well written. I really liked this as an origin story. I remember when I first saw this, I was thinking to myself I was really confused at the scene where Bruce Wayne woke up in a prison cell. I was thinking to myself, wait a minute. Bruce Wayne's a good guy. He's not supposed to be in jail. And I was impressed that Nolan started out this story in the most unexpected of places for a hero to be. He wasn't waking up in his mansion where he was safe and cozy, where he could go to a psychiatrist or a psychologist about the nightmares he was having. And it seemed like a very organic way to transition Bruce Wayne into a place where he would learn all he needed to know to become Batman. There's a lot more things I could talk about in terms of its story, but I don't want to take up too much of this review. So all that to say, the story is great. Now I'm going to talk about how this compares to the other Batman movies that Nolan has made. Now, The Dark Knight Rises was a complete piece of horse shit. The Dark Knight, on the other hand, was a vast and major improvement. I will review those movies some other time, though. One thing I do need to address that all three of these movies have in common was the terrible editing of the fight scenes and just how terribly choreographed those are. In retrospect, I don't think that there was a single scene in any of these movies that I was actually entertained by, at least in terms of the fight scenes. I mean, the chase scenes were great, but the fight scenes, no. And that's mainly because the editing of these fight scenes were boring and shows us close-ups when we want to see wider angles. Is it really so much to ask that I want to actually see the fight occurring and not see blurry camera footage? Now, everyone has made fun of Christian Bale playing Batman. The raspy voice he puts on is cringe and stupid, yes. But outside of that, Bale plays Bruce Wayne with a poised and cool composure, and perhaps a bit lacking in charisma and charm, but he does separate himself by not acting like Michael Keaton's Batman, or like Robert Pattinson's Batman, because he was more like a 007 character than anything else. Now, I avoided seeing Batman Begins for the last few years, and I have good reason to do that, because there are some movies that I've seen over and over and over again, to the point where I've kind of memorized them. I realize now that I don't like it when I've memorized a movie, because when that happens, it's lost all of its effect on me, and this is the reason that I intentionally avoid watching any movie that I like over and over again, because otherwise I won't like it anymore. It happened with the very first Spider-Man movie with Tobey Maguire, and I never want that to happen to any other movie that I like ever again. This doesn't mean that I won't revisit this movie or any of the movies that I've already seen. I just want to be surprised again by a movie that I haven't seen for a while. And I can't really say that I was surprised by Batman Begins, but I can say that I really enjoyed getting to see this again, and it still stands as one of my favorite superhero movies of all time. Batman Begins gets 5 stars out of 5.